We got the idea for this project a couple of years ago when I was down in the Bay Area and went to the Presidio where there was an exhibit called The Habitats. And it was a beautiful land-based outdoor exhibit in a beautiful natural environment. So I came back to Nevada City thinking we should do that here. And right around that time, they had just dedicated the tribute trail along the Deer Creek. And so I started talking to a few people about it, and we all decided this is a good thing. We should do it.
The tribute trail that Nancy referred to that had just recently opened is actually runs along Deer Creek in our little town of Nevada City, and Deer Creek is really the reason for Nevada City's being. It's where the gold rush started here, and so there's a great amount of history. It's a place that people associate with this town, and it's very much a part of it. And so it made a lot of sense to utilize this trail that lined the Deer Creek to put another layer of interpretation about our community.
So a place like Nevada City is interesting to me because the intersection of the natural and the human built it's sort of such a fine line. Yeah, often in other, in a completely natural setting, you don't have the human, and in an urban setting, you don't really have much of the natural. But in Nevada City, it's very closely integrated, and that to me makes for some very interesting possibilities.
One of the cool things about this project is the fact that, just the fact that we're going to be putting artwork on the trail is going to draw people out to sort of see what the trail is. I mean, I think, we get sort of used to kind of going places where we go and being places where we are, and don't really think to kind of get out and check places like this out.
So we have this great idea, this big idea, but of course it takes a lot of effort and planning to pull something like this off. We're just a couple of people from Nevada City who we're not a 501(c) or anything like that. So we sought out the Sierra Fund, that is a not-for-profit here in the Sierra who works with conserving and protecting the environment, and this is very much sort of in their realm.
The other thing about the Sierra Fund, too, that was really important is that they had been the sort of coordinators, I guess, of the whole Tribute Trail project. And so they had the relationships, which helped us a great deal to kind of get over the hurdles of having to be introduced. We got off to a great start with them.
And so once we got this sort of a critical mass of stakeholders and supporters together, we started actually crafting together the project. And one of the first things we needed to do was to establish a vision statement about what we wanted to accomplish. And we were sharing that with all of our stakeholders as we met with them, which then we needed to turn into a call for artists. So one of our next big tasks was to put together a framework or an infrastructure, if you will, for our team, those who were going to make this happen. And we were able to get a really interesting cross-section of people interested in joining these committees because they weren't all necessarily arts-oriented people. Some were coming more from an interest in the environment, in Deer Creek, and in the history or whatever. But it brought people together that maybe never would have worked together on a project before.
Our initial budget was $65,000, which was relatively modest, but we decided that this was our first year. We hadn't done this before. It never had been done in the community, so we should be safe. So $65,000 would cover our marketing, our brochures, our outreach, a short film, our education, artist in residence program,
as well as stipends for the
artists
as well,
and fees for the jury. Right around the same time, I read that the National Endowment for the Arts had a program called Our Town, which to me, reading its guidelines, it fit perfectly because it was about creative placemaking in large and small towns, and they did have a rural component, which fit perfectly for us. So we applied for the grant and received $25,000.
Not only did we get $25,000 to match, but we also had the NEA's name behind our project, which then all of a sudden just ratcheted us up in terms of visibility, credibility, and consistent with that same thinking, we knew then the next phase where we actually started pulling together a jury would need to be of that same caliber, names that potential artists would recognize when they read the call for artists. We wanted a cross section of different arts orientations or different arts institutions or backgrounds, so that we'd have a good cross section of thinking. And we were really pleased with the group that we pulled together.
So we were off to a good start
Yeah.
with them, and then we created our call to artists, used our website, found to create the forms and the response mechanism, and then went to various websites and publicized our call.
We had the jurors assemble here in Nevada City early December, and it was pouring down rain, and they didn't get to see much of the site. But we had given them some criteria. Of course, they had the call for artists, and they understood what it was we were expecting out of the artists. They ended up selecting 7 individuals or teams. The 2 teams were of 3 and 2, so we ended up with actually a total of 10 artists. First of all, they represented a really wide geographic area. Everything from northern California, one local artist, a Sacramento artist, one from Oakland, a couple from San Francisco, Marin, and then down to San Diego, LA, and one from Reno. It was really exciting to see that sort of cross-section of points of view, as well as the media in which these artists worked. Because we have everything from sculptors to poets to painters to everything sort of across the
Design.
board.
Works that would lend themselves to each other in a sense,
Right.
but kind of work together. And I think in the end that wasn't a goal, but it worked, and it worked out beautifully.
But I do think that people bring a different sensibility when they encounter a piece outside, let's say outside the museum or outside the gallery, because they're not expecting to see it, or they wouldn't see it as apart from everything else they would see. Like that sign could be a piece of public art, whereas if you go to the gallery, you're expecting to see art there. So expectations are a little bit less predictable.
Another thing that seemed really important about it was the importance of the literary history of Nevada City. This is a really important place in the history of California poetry and California nature writing. And so to be able to interact or be able to use language in a way that interacts with this landscape, considering the history and the importance of this place in terms of literature, also made it a really exciting opportunity for us.
My work deals a lot with this hybridization between the man-made or the human-made world and the natural world, and kind of this new emerging landscape, which is more of a combination of the two. And so my work is kind of born from this intersection between the natural and the man-made.
So through the process of design and determining the artists, we need to keep touching base with a number of these, particularly the key stakeholders,
Partners, yeah.
and particularly the city of Nevada City. They wanted us to keep them apprised of what was happening, when, where, how, and so we made at least a couple of presentations to City Council.
among the stakeholders, two in particular, the Bureau of Land Management and the Nevada Irrigation District were part, of course, major stakeholders. And they came out on the trail and talked with the artists and about their installations and how it was going to impact the land or not, and the position of the pieces. And they were terrific. I mean, they followed along and were appreciative, supportive,
Yeah.
and gave great feedback.
Part of our vision statement dealt with education and broad education of the public, both about art and land art, also education about the environment and where we live and the history of what we did to our landscape and now how we need to think about it in another way. We wanted to reach out to children as well. We had an artist in residence program, and 3 of the artists were very excited about participating in a 2-day class that they would teach. The 3 of them each brought a different sort of point of view, a different medium that they worked with. And the first day they took the kids out onto the trail to do various things, observations, write down their observations, draw sketches, look at things. And then the second day they did an exercise in class to interpret what they had seen and what they... I'm really pleased about how I believe this project really raised the bar relative to the arts in this community. We, I think, brought a whole different awareness about what art could be, and that it wasn't necessarily just a plop something here or there, but an integrated, thoughtful, something that told a story about a place and specifically about the place, and I'm very proud of that.
Not art necessarily that most people have seen in galleries and museums, but getting outside of that realm, and then also provoking a little bit, asking some questions, making people think, and that's what art can do. And it certainly met our goal, which was, to provide awareness about the Deer Creek watershed and what was happening down there, bring people to the trail. It increased the exposure to the trail, people walking on the trail, at least by 3 times the number who had visited the trail in its first year.
It enhanced or expanded the awareness of Nevada City, of our community, because there were people, not only residents who live here, who were viewing this and visiting it, but also we have a lot of tourists in this town. We're based on a tourist economy, and so lots of people are coming and going, and we formulated a brochure that had a map and information about all the installations, and we had it in various retail locations around town and at the Chamber of Commerce and whatever, so that people, when they came to town, could pick one of these up. I think it just expanded their understanding of who we are as a community and what we as a whole community could accomplish.